drives through this parking lot, sees a 3-year-old girl in the parking lot by herself, carrying a pillow, barefoot. So he's looking for her parents and not seeing any parents and thinking, something's not right. Where's your mommy? Mr. Robbie put her by the water. How'd you get here? And she points to this car that's in the parking lot. And he looks in the car. The passenger seat has blood. The center console, there's a bunch of stuff in the back seat. There's blood spatter all over that. Blood everywhere. Mr. Robbie hurt mommy.
Washington was 7 months pregnant with Mark's child at the time of her death. Marks then left her 3-year-old daughter in a car overnight.
He took my best friend. He took Darielle's mother. You took her mom.
Welcome to Socialite Crime Club. What kind of investigative stress dilemmas are we introducing socialites to today?
We're going to talk about the anxieties that are created by not being able to solve a crime. For an investigator, you have the evidence. You can see the crime play out, but you just can't find that last puzzle piece to bring it all together. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much anxiety this can create, especially on a really high-profile national media case where everybody's looking at what you do. And the minutes are just ticking by. And every time another minute goes, I know I'm missing more evidence and more evidence. Which is why one day I'm sitting at my desk and the phone rings. And the first thing the investigator says, "God damn it, Si, the Gators are going to get her."
You did sound very much like him. I'll give you that today.
I'm curious how many of our socialites caught that last week's episode, Scants.
Mm-hmm.
Commercial free.
Oh.
There was no ads, no YouTube ads.
Yes, we've been getting some complaints that the ads were getting out of control. And I have to agree. I don't know why YouTube put so many ads, but then crap ads. They weren't even good ads to listen to.
Yeah, and when I see those comments, I'm thinking, well, people, we have to pay the bills. Like, we have to pay the electric bill. My hair bill is absurd. So we have to figure out a way to make some money. But at the same time, I watched the episode after I saw a couple of those complaints. Not only are there too many, they were just annoying.
Yeah.
So you're welcome, socialites.
Yes.
We are giving you ad-free episodes last week. This week's episode, ad-free.
Mm-hmm.
Big news next week, socialites. Make sure you tune in. We're going to explain how we're able to go ad-free now. Let's talk about some of the new upcoming changes we're making, notifications, different things that we have coming down the pipe. What's the first one?
One of the first things that we're introducing are themes. So we talk a lot about...
Themes for each episode?
Kind of, yeah. We're talking about what types of true crime you might be interested in. So we do cover a lot of different types of crimes here at Socialite Crime Club. And some people only like cozy crimes that we're defining.
Wait. What's a cozy crime?
Cozy crimes, in my opinion, nothing bad really happens, right? Everything kind of turns out good in the end for somebody. Nobody dies. Nobody's severely injured.
So would you call like our socialite scants from last week a cozy
they're a little
crime?
bit cozier. Yeah,
Okay.
they're more lighthearted, right?
I'm not crying at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and you're not crying during the episode.
That's good.
I'm not cringing at something that you're saying. So that would be considered a cozy crime. Today's episode was more of a gritty crime. And gritty crimes are not for the faint of heart. These are extremely violent cases with graphic details on the cruelty that victims might have been subjected to. And these are the cases that really stick with us for their sheer brutality. So it's you've been warned. So you'll see the type of crime that we're going to be presenting before each episode, and then you'll see some sensitivity ratings.
Okay, so hang on. I watch the show every week on YouTube. Where do I find this little guide that tells me what type of crime we're talking about?
So you can actually find this guide in the community tab on YouTube. So just scroll over to the community tab.
So for those of you who don't know where to scroll, when Keri says scroll over, I didn't either. When you go into our channel, you'll see our long form videos, our shorts, and there's different things, our lives. If you scroll all the way over to the right, I think the last tab there is community, and it's more like a social media post. Think of almost a Facebook notifications for YouTube. That's what's in the community tab.
It's like a little community bulletin board.
Yeah, so we'll always drop these little indicators, if you will, in the community tab before each episode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to the swamp today.
Before we go to the swamp, let's start with our victim.
Okay.
Lyntell Washington.
Okay.
Lyntell Washington, she's a teacher. We happen to know a few teachers. might be related to a handful of them. Not only is she a teacher, she was teacher of the year in Louisiana.
Oh.
She's a good teacher. She's a really good teacher. She's originally from New Orleans, and she has some early struggles, I think is the easiest way to say it. I'm not going to get into a bunch of details with that, but she moves from New Orleans to Baton Rouge to kind of start over and really put some roots down. And she's teaching in Baton Rouge at the Brookstone Middle School.
Oh, middle school.
Yeah. Oh, those middle schoolers. Oof.
Or grade I would not want to teach if I were a teacher. Yeah.
While she's teaching at Brookstone, this is where she gets the Teacher of the Year. So she's very well respected. She's a great teacher. Her students absolutely adore her. And I've seen a number of videos where her students talk about her, and you can tell this is a woman who changed their lives. And, you have certain teachers who you get by with, and then you have teachers you can look back later in life and think, man, that person really impacted my life.
They actually made a difference for somebody.
Yeah, and I think Lyntell definitely was that teacher for a number of her students. She's single, but she meets a guy. They're going to start a relationship, and ultimately they are going to have a daughter together. Again, I'm not going to get into a lot of details. He's struggling with a lot of demons, as he puts it.
Oh.
And I think Lyntell and this other guy kind of make the decision, hey, you're not the best person to be in our daughter's life right now. So he's kind of out of the picture in the pregnancy, when she's born, and for the first couple years. So by all accounts, Lyntell is a single mother who is a full-time teacher.
Oh, okay. All right. So she's working hard.
So on our timeline, we're at about 2016. So the year 2016, her daughter is now 3. She's still teaching at Brookstone. And she meets another man, completely different. This man doesn't have the demons, at least doesn't appear. There are some sparks. What's interesting is they know each other. They've known each other for a long time, but they've never considered each other in a romantic way. So they're kind of friends who ultimately start dating.
Okay.
He's a doctor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gynecologist?
I was not ready for that. Why would it be your gynecologist?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to spoil the entire case for you, but he has a PhD in bullshit, essentially.
Oh,
but he is a doctor. Okay. He also has one in education, so he has a PhD in education. He is the vice principal at Brookstone Middle School.
Oh,
so technically, he's kind of her boss.
Oh,
are vice principals bosses of teachers?
I suppose they could be. I guess it depends on how the school operates.
Does the teacher ever get sent to the principal's office? They do.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His name is Dr. Robert Marks, M-A-R-K-S. So if I'm talking about Dr. Marks or Marks later on, it's Dr. Robert Marks. He also goes by Robbie, so a nickname of Robbie. Now, workplace romances, always a terrible idea. Would you not agree?
Yes.
Nothing good ever comes from a workplace romance.
Except you and I.
I was just about to ask you where you met your husband.
Except you and I.
There's another issue with Dr. Marks, though, that could really negatively impact this relationship with Lyntell, and I'm not real sure how they're going to work through this one.
What?
He's married.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
Oh.
Yeah, Lyntell is the affair of a married man, and Lyntell knows this because they're good friends. Lyntell knows that he's married and has been married for quite some time.
Is there any sign of like him leaving? Are they divorcing? Why would she? Lyntell seems like a pretty bright person. Why would she be risking this?
So when kind of the first sparks fly, Lyntell confronts him and is like, hey, you're making me blush, but aren't you married? Mm-hmm. And he explains to her, well, yes, technically, that's how you know it's never going to end well. Technically,
right.
I am married, but we're going through a divorce. Yeah, we're living together still, but it's for financial reasons. It's just easier. And we have this 2-story house, and the way our house is set up, you can live on the second floor or you could live on the first floor. It's not like you have to go up and down the stairs every day to live in that house. So she lives upstairs, I live downstairs, and we just have our own lives. And we're working through some of our financial stuff, but eventually the ultimate goal is, yes, I'm going to be moving out. We're going to be selling the house.
Okay.
So I still live with my wife, and technically we're still married, but we're going through a divorce and we are very much separated.
Which I could see that for a lot of people where they do just live in separate spaces of the house until they separate.
Nope. Pro tip. You never start dating while going through a divorce where you still live under the same roof as your potential soon-to-be ex-wife.
Yeah,
you don't date at that stage.
Well, I'm not saying like I do agree that's very difficult to date at that stage. But I do think there are a lot of people who do have to go through the situation of having to live together while going through the process of a separation.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm not faulting that.
Right.
100%. But that's probably not a good time to start a new relationship.
Right.
You're bringing a lot of baggage to the show.
You are, especially if there's kids involved.
Yeah. And
did he have kids with his wife?
I don't believe so. It's a great question. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think so. Now, there's one other thing that is going on that gives Lyntell a little bit of, I guess, belief in his story. He's always available. So she calls him intentionally at hours he should be home with his wife. She invites him over randomly just to see what he does. And some of it is her testing him. Is he really as available?
Is he available during non-business hours?
Yeah, exactly. And he is. So she's starting to get a little bit of, I don't know, affirmation maybe that, hey, he is available all the time. Maybe this story is 100% on.
Right.
He's being honest. He's being upfront with me. Let's see where this thing goes.
Okay.
So they continue dating. There's a handful of teachers that she works with that she's become very close with. Some of her best friends are the other teachers. And she's told a couple of them, like, hey, we're a thing. And they're like, oh, dear. Right. So there's this little gossip
and
thing.
The other teachers are aware that he's married.
Yes, but also potentially going through a divorce, the setup that they have, if you will.
Okay.
But all the other teachers that later on will come forward, they seemed really happy. They seemed to click really well together. And
do any of these other teachers actually know his wife? Does anyone ever communicate with her?
I don't believe so. It sounds like she's really outside the picture because the wife, I will tell you, I'm going to spoiler alert here, has no idea this is going on. None.
Okay.
So they continue dating and Lyntell gets pregnant. And Dr. Marks is the father of this child.
And how long had they actually been dating?
I want to say maybe 6 months to a year.
Okay.
And things progress, but there's some tension going on here. Dr. Marks does not want this child.
Okay.
Lyntell absolutely wants this child. And as it always happens, they kind of have it out on that fake love holiday. What's that fake holiday?
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Yes.
So on Valentine's Day, there's actually kind of this little rift between them where Dr. Marks is suggesting maybe you should get an abortion.
Oh,
and she's not having it.
Valentine's Day, it seems, is never a good day to reveal that you're pregnant.
Or that you should get an abortion.
Right. Good point.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Another pro tip. Look at all the pro tips we're throwing out this episode.
Yeah, lots of good advice going on today. We're not lawyers, though.
Yeah, don't listen to us. Lyntell is definitely going to have this child. And there is some rifts now back and forth about, is he going to support this child? Is he going to be more of a father figure than just this boyfriend, or Lyntell's the side girl, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and Lyntell starts to see maybe this isn't all peaches after all.
Okay. And he is of the belief that he is the father of the child. He knows he is.
There's no doubt. There's communications going back and forth where he is clearly saying, yeah, I don't want this child. And it's not because I'm not the father, right? He's taking responsibility in the decision-making process of, do we have this child or not?
He does not want to be financially accountable for this child.
Yeah. We'll also get into his Google history later on.
Oh.
He's Googling some things that definitely point to the fact he knows this is his child. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit. Now, like I said, Lyntell is definitely going forward with the pregnancy. She's absolutely going to have this child. And there's some really interesting things in Lyntell's history that promotes this a little further that I want to give our audience just a little bit of insight on. When Lyntell was very young, again, I don't know the specifics, but there was a reason something happened, and through a medical exam as a result, she was told she could not have children. So she had pretty much set her mind that she would never get pregnant. And obviously being a teacher, she loves children, she loves being around children, and that was a really hard pill for her to swallow. So when she got pregnant with her 3-year-old, it was kind of this miracle baby the way she saw it. Like, I'm not supposed to be pregnant, and I just got pregnant.
Okay.
Well, now she's pregnant again. So when I say that she's going to have the child, I want to make it really clear to our socialites, she's all in. Not only is she not going to have an abortion, it was never an option.
Sure.
That helps kind of paint that picture a little bit. This is a really big deal to her. Now I'm going to go forward a few more months after Valentine's Day. Now we're hitting, I don't know, late April, early May.
Do we know at Valentine's Day how far along Lyntell's pregnancy was?
She was about 3 months, give or take, maybe a couple weeks.
Okay.
So we're going to fast forward through the spring, getting to the end of the spring. So now we're talking May, June-ish timeframe. Mm-hmm. And the doctor is going to go on a family reunion trip.
Oh.
Panama City. His whole family meets down there, apparently.
They're
yearly.
from Panama?
No, I don't know what the tie to Panama City. They just like to go to Panama City, I guess. So
the whole family goes to Panama City for a family reunion.
Yeah, I don't know.
This sounds shady.
Why do you always do that?
Because
it could be legit.
This is where stuff's going to get good.
This is what I call the first harmful event.
Red flag.
Red flag. I think Lyntell was in the same mindset that you're in. This is BS.
Yes.
So maybe Lyntell's poking around on social media while the good doctor is away to try to figure out, hey, what's his wife doing? What's he doing? I'm not hearing much. I'm not seeing much. I wonder what he's doing down in Panama City. Mm-hmm. And he runs across the wife's Facebook page.
She just runs across it.
It happens.
It just popped up in her feed.
Wifey might be posting some photos of a cruise that she's on with the good doctor.
Oh, dear.
Got a picture here for you.
So it was a family reunion cruise.
I don't even think it was a family reunion. I think
because everybody wears T-shirts for family reunion cruises, like letting everybody know they're part of a big group, right?
Yeah, but I don't think he's on any type of a family reunion. I think him and the wife went on a cruise.
Yeah.
And Lyntell's going to find out. Here's a picture.
Lyntell isn't getting
look
a
how
cruise.
Happy they are.
They are happy. He doesn't look happy that his wife is taking the picture.
It's the hat. When you wear a hat like that, it's hard to look happy.
Just makes you look droopy.
Yeah, it's going to give you that droopy look. Like if you took that hat off, that little smirky hat would actually look like
it's a little
smile.
Bucket hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the hat.
It
so needless to say, this sets Lyntell off. She is not a happy camper.
Yeah.
And she's mad, really mad.
Okay.
Now, when she finds this, she starts calling, she starts texting, no reply.
Right, because if you're going through a divorce, why the heck are you going on a cruise?
Are you staying in separate rooms?
Yeah. You making amends?
Let me guess. You booked this a year ago and you just can't get out of it? Right? Like, what is this excuse?
You won it on a radio ad?
Yeah. So
you had to go?
She's really irate about this. And the more communication that the doctor cuts off with her, the madder she gets. So this is just starting to escalate.
Sure.
And she gets to a point where, by her numbers, he should be back home. So she's like, screw it. If he's not going to respond to my text messages or calls, I'm going to go confront him. And she figures out his address. I don't know how, and I'm not going to get into it, but she gets his actual address. So she's going to drive over there and she's going to confront him and tell his wife, because now she's firmly convinced the wife doesn't know.
Texting this to him?
Yeah, she's actually told him, if you don't tell her, I will. And he's not responding. So she gets pissed where she's like, screw it. I'm going to the house. I'm going to tell her.
Okay.
So she drives across town. Remember, this is the first time she's even found the address.
And she hasn't seen him at school to talk to him about this.
No, I think it's summer break. This is early June.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay.
So she pulls up to his house. Well, it's not really a house. She pulls up to his trailer.
There's no dual level.
I've never seen a 2-story trailer. But yeah, he lives in a mobile home.
This must have been severely disappointing for her.
She loses her shit. She doesn't even confront him. She just leaves because she's like, oh my God. Not only is he on a cruise with his wife, he doesn't live in a 2-story house. There's no way they're not on top of each other in this mobile home. Right. This whole thing is a lie. They're not getting divorced. I'm the side chick.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, this really hits her hard.
That's just so many facts to be hit with at once.
Right. And when you are expecting this 2-story nice home that the doctor lives in and you pull up and it's a mobile home, it's a shock value. There's nothing against people who live in a mobile home. I grew up in a mobile home, but at the same time, I didn't even grow up in a mobile home.
At the same time, in her head, she's thinking when she has this baby, there's going to be potentially opportunity to live in a nice house with him, to establish a life with him in like a nice home where her child will have its own room, etc. She has things going through her mind that she's already fantasizing of a life with him.
Yeah, see, I didn't even consider that, but that's definitely the female perspective on this. Is that like that huge letdown, right?
Yeah.
So at this stage, she's trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Clearly, he's not who I thought he is. Mm-hmm. I don't see this future life He's damn sure going to pay child support, right? So she's completely changing her tune at this point to accountability opposed to this relationship. She wants the wife to know, and she wants to keep him accountable for child support and basically supporting what he's created here. Right?
As she should. He's just created a tangle of lies.
So she confides in one of her best friends, who's also one of the teachers there. Hey, get this, and gives her the whole rundown. And she's trying to ask this teacher, like, how should I confront him? Like, what's the best way for me to just give it to him? And this teacher's like, you've got to do it in person. You got to look into his eyes. You need to see how he reacts when you confront him with all this information, because that's what's going to really tell you what he's thinking. So she agrees, and she keeps calling the doctor, and eventually she's going to get a hold of the doctor, and she's like, hey, we got to talk. And they agree to meet kind of halfway. She lives kind of on the southern end of Baton Rouge, and he lives way north.
Okay.
So they're going to meet in the middle somewhat at a Walmart.
Oh, nothing good ever happens at Walmart.
Yeah, let's talk.
We've talked about this before.
Walmart's terrible. Yeah. Walmart and Bud Light. Like, if you see pictures of Bud Light, you know it's a homicide scene.
Yes.
And when a story starts out about meeting at Walmart, you know it's probably going to go south quickly.
Yeah. And with the Bud Light stuff, like every homicide picture I look at, if there's a beer can in the homicide picture, it's always Bud Light.
You call it the killing beer.
I've always called it the killing beer.
There's a lot of truth to that, especially family reunions.
Family reunions are the worst. Yeah.
Family reunions with a couple cases of Bud Light, somebody's dying.
Yes.
Or at least getting shot.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some best practices here. And this goes back to our old adage. We're not victim blaming. We're learning. Okay, so I want to throw some things out to people. She doesn't trust this guy. He has been lying to her. She doesn't know what else he's capable of. She doesn't know what else she doesn't know about him.
Sure.
A couple things she's going to do here that when we look back, I think the takeaway of this episode for our socialites is to get this word out. Number one, she's going to take her 3-year-old with her.
Oh, no.
Don't do this. Let's not have the kids
Keep
anywhere
your kids out of it. I wonder what in her mind made her think it would be good to take the 3-year-old.
Probably very basic childcare. I don't have somebody else to watch her. She's 3. I can't leave her home. Right?
Maybe.
Kind of a last minute meeting thing.
But her friend was the one encouraging her to go. I'm sure her friend would have watched.
That's the second piece of this. Don't go alone. Take your friend. Take somebody that you trust with you.
Yes. Don't
meet in private. Don't ever meet in a parking lot, especially at Walmart. And a lot of people might think, well, it's not private, it's public. I'm in a parking lot at Walmart. Do not do that. When I say meet public,
go to a restaurant.
In a restaurant with other people and take somebody with you, even if they don't sit at the same table, and make sure he knows, hey, so-and-so's with me.
It will either force that other person to remain calm, or other people will witness their terrible behavior.
100%. And you have people that, in theory, could help you if something starts to go bad.
Yes.
She doesn't have any kind of a check on me plan. And what I mean by that is she doesn't tell the other friend, hey, I'm going to go meet him tonight at this time. If you haven't heard from me by such and such date or time, call me, follow up with me, do something. The other thing, it's 2024. Back then it was 2016, but there were still apps. Turn on tracking on your phone. Tell your best friend, hey, I'm going to share my location with you. My kids do this to this day, and they're old.
Yeah, our kids,
old kids.
All of our kids share their locations with us.
Yeah, so just things to think about. And at the end of the day, and we're going to circle back to this at the very end of this episode, she doesn't trust him. So why should she trust him? Right. And I think that's the thing to let resonate in people's head. If you don't trust him, then don't trust him. If you have some type of instinct that this person is bad, like we've said before, anyone is capable of murder in the right circumstance. And we actually had somebody ask, do you mean murder or killing? Both. Both. Anyone is capable of it, but put in the right situation, anyone is capable of murder. Yeah, and I think it's important that I did see that comment, and I want to address it really quick. Killing somebody is murder. Now, it may be justified, but if you look at the sole piece of that definition, it's one and the same. So I think we're splitting hairs there. Let's not get caught up in that. So the meetup. Dr. Marks is going to ride his motorcycle to Walmart, and Lyntell drives her car, and they're going to meet in the parking lot. Okay. We don't know what happens after that. The next morning, there's this guy who does like home health care. And he's leaving work. It's early in the morning, about 7:30. He's leaving. And as he's leaving this little area he was working in overnight, he drives through this parking lot, sees a 3-year-old girl in the parking lot by herself, carrying a pillow, barefoot. So he's looking for her parents and not seeing any parents and thinking, something's not right here. So he pulls over and makes contact with this little 3-year-old. By the way, this 3-year-old, super articulate, very smart for a 3-year-old. She can make full sentences. She's very easy to understand. She's not just blabbling stuff. She is very specific in her language.
Okay.
Where's your mommy? She's by the lake, or by water. I think it was she's by water. As he starts talking to her a little bit more, he notices she's got some blood on her, like on her feet and the bottom of her calves. She's got like blood spatter, so some blood stains. So he's like, where did you last see mommy? And she's giving a few random things like by the water. Mr. Robbie hurt her. Of course, this guy doesn't know who Mr. Robbie is.
Right.
And I think at some point he says something about her car, like, where's her car? How'd you get here? And she points to this car that's in the parking lot. So at that point, he walks over, and she's not near the car when he makes contact. So he kind of has to walk to the end of the parking lot. And he looks in the car. There's blood everywhere. The passenger seat has blood, the center console. There's a bunch of stuff in the back seat. There's blood spatter all over that. So he immediately is like, oh, this isn't good. And he calls 911. So on 911, he's talking to the 911 operator, but he's still talking to this 3-year-old girl. So you can actually hear a lot of her comments through the 911 tape back and forth. And she says a couple things about Mr. Robbie hurt mommy. And that hurt her in her head. Like, where did he hurt her? Her head. And that she was holding her head. And then she went to sleep. Like the
little girl was holding her mommy's head?
The mom was holding her head and was hurt. And then she went to sleep. And Mr. Robbie put her by the water.
Oh my gosh. So do we know if the 3-year-old followed him to the water?
We don't know yet. We're going to come back to that here in just a little bit.
Okay.
But pretty crazy, right?
Yes.
So law enforcement's going to show up, obviously, as a result of this 911 call. They see the car. They're going to run the car right off the bat. So they find out it's registered to Lyntell. Not only is it registered to Lyntell, but the address where she lives is almost right across the street in this apartment complex. So they're putting 2 and 2 together. Oh, crap, she lives right across the street. So they go to the apartment as well, and they're trying to make a kind of a safety check, if you will, at the apartment. Well, about this time, it's past 8 o'clock. School has started. It is a school day. Lyntell hasn't shown up to work.
A teacher of the year always shows up to work.
And that's what everybody at the school said. Something is wrong. There's no reason she would ever not show up. So her friend, who she confided all this other stuff in, is like, I've got to go check on her. Leaves school, goes to the apartment, finds all of law enforcement there. And this is where they start putting the pieces together. And law enforcement is doing a quick interview with her, like, hey, we don't know where she's at. It appears she's hurt. There's lots of blood. Her daughter is saying Mr. Robbie, something about a Mr. Robbie. And of course, this teacher's like, oh shit, Robert Marks goes by. He's known by Robbie, Mr. Robbie. So all of a sudden, like, these pieces are going to come together very quickly. Okay, where's Mr. Marks at? This is also when law enforcement finds out for the first time she's pregnant. So this is going to escalate things. So when I was talking in the very beginning about some of this anxiety, so all they know at this point is she's missing. She's clearly hurt, maybe deceased. She's pregnant. The clock is ticking. Like, they've got to find her. And then they get this little piece of information. She might be by the water.
She's by the water in a swamp in Baton Rouge.
Pretty much all the water around Baton Rouge is a swamp. All of Baton Rouge is a swamp.
Yeah.
So, yeah, big issues here.
Yeah, the clock is ticking.
So at the end of the day, this is all going to come down to, where's Lyntell? We've got to find Lyntell. I'm going to mess with our socialites just a little bit here.
You always do.
Because this was one of the saddest things that I saw about this story.
Okay.
Lyntell has a twin sister, identical twin.
Oh.
Now, when the friend showed up at the apartment complex and law enforcement's figuring all this out, she takes custody, if you will, of the child for the time being. I'll take her home. I'll wash her. Let's get her cleaned up. Let's get her in some fresh clothes. Let's figure out what's going on. So as law enforcement is starting to coordinate this stuff, Lyntell's twin sister lives a long ways away, but she gets word. So she's driving as fast as she can to get there. Some time passes.
I see where this is headed.
Daughter's putting 2 and 2 together that where's my mommy? What's going on? Because she hasn't pieced together what's happening yet either.
Yeah.
And Lyntell's sister shows up and comes through the front door at the friend's house. Daughter sees her, think it's her mom, literally runs to her calling mommy.
Oh my God.
Like how just, like take a little stab in the heart there for you. Okay, let's talk about no-body homicides really quick. And what I mean here is it's not impossible. I've had a number of cases where we've had successful prosecution of homicides where you never recover the victim, but it's tough. You've got to have some really critical evidence.
Just flipping that switch real quick. I'm still thinking about the little girl.
Moving on, people. Yeah, we got things to do.
Switch.
Sorry. It's tough to prosecute a no-body homicide. In this case, there is not enough physical evidence to do this at this point. So finding her not only is important to make sure if she's okay or not, but without her body at this point, it's going to be a really hard case to put together. The amount of blood helps. You can look at that car and think if this person isn't dead, they are severely injured, but we can't prove she's dead. And at the end of the day, we've got to prove somebody's dead to charge murder.
Was Mr. Robbie's DNA in the car? Could they put his DNA anywhere?
Not at this point. And remember, we're still early in the case.
Okay.
But we'll come back to that here in just a little bit.
Sure.
But not only is it important to find Lyntell to check on her safety, that is the most critical piece of evidence. And I don't, like you said, flipping that switch, I'm going to mess with you with the twin sister and then flip the switch right back to say, hey, as an investigator, we have to look at this from a very unemotional perspective.
Yeah.
The most important piece of evidence we have is
her
that body.
Yeah.
And we have to consider that because at some point, people are going to want their pound of flesh, right?
Yes.
All of the emotional side is going to go through and people are going to get angry.
Yeah.
And we've got to do that case. So they're going to jump on cell phone records really, really quick on this case.
Sure.
You have East Baton Rouge DA's office is also involved now. So that'll be the prosecuting agency. And within the East Baton Rouge DA's office, you have investigators. So they've got a couple investigators that are working these cell phone angles. Both Lyntell and Dr. Marks have AT&T phones. So the records that they're going to get are AT&T. Now, this is 2016. We're going to get basic call detail records, date, time, duration, who called, text, or data connections, and then what cell site and the side of the cell site that phone connected to.
The sector.
Yeah. We're also going to get what's called Nellos. Nellos is a proprietary thing to AT&T. AT&T is the only network that provides it. And it's estimated locations of the device itself. And it'll come as latitude and longitude. And then you'll get a range. And you'll see like a 25 meter range, 50 meter range, 200 meter range.
They vary. They're consistently different throughout the entire data set.
Right. And I've seen up to a 35,000 meter range. That means they're somewhere in Baton Rouge, right?
Yeah. At times it can be very accurate. At other times it's not accurate at all.
I have seen hits in different states where we know the target phone is in Seattle and it hits in New Orleans. Like it's not uncommon. So there are problems with the Nellos data. Now, the FBI is also involved, the FBI CAS team, and they don't like Nellos data. They don't like to testify to it. They don't like to use it. They've seen a lot of errors with it. So they kind of just consider it right off the bat, like, this is garbage. We're not going to direct our investigation based on the Nellos.
And side note, the name of the Nellos report has changed since this time.
It has. It's now called Locabor, which is their acronym, if you will, of location data. And it can be very accurate, but can also be very inaccurate. Now, East Baton Rouge DA's office, like I said, is involved. And one of the investigators that's working the phones is a guy by the name of Chuck. And Chuck had been through one of our classes, maybe 6 months prior. Yeah. Got to tell a quick side story on this class. Okay. I'm in Baton Rouge. We're pretty much in the swamp, deep south. A lot of good old boys. Fun group. They were really, really good to us. But I remember in part of that class, something happened and I thought, oh, this isn't good. And then it was no problem at all. And I just remember thinking, oh, that is so weird. There was a dude who showed up in actual coveralls.
Okay.
Or overalls, not coveralls, overalls.
Yeah.
And flip-flops.
Did he have a shirt on under his overalls?
Yeah, he had the shirt on.
That's good. Okay.
But you could, it looked like he just came from the swamp. Like he was gator hunting or something the night before. It was pretty crazy. And he shows up to class.
He was putting duct tape on a gator's mouth.
Yeah, wrestling gators on his side gig or something.
Yeah.
And he shows up and he's a really nice guy. Just super engaging, friendly. He's got that really deep South accent. And we're doing introductions. This is right in the beginning of class. And there's a female in the class from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And when he does his introduction, she asks him a question. She's kind of sitting behind him a little bit. And he turns around and he's like, no, sweetheart, that's not what I do. I do this over here. And I'm thinking, oh, dude, don't call another person in the class sweetheart day one, first hour. Like you can't. But the way he said it in his swamp hillbilly demeanor made it so natural
and sincere.
Everybody in the class is like, oh, he's just a nice guy.
It was.
And I'm thinking, if I would have called her sweetheart, I guess there is something known as swamp charm. It was
tolerably acceptable somehow.
Swamp charm.
Swamp charm. Oh, swamp charm.
And I wouldn't put Chuck in that same level, but Chuck's a good old boy from the swamp. He's a great guy. Yeah. So when I say I get this phone call, God damn it, Cy, the Gators are going to get her. I kid you not. That's how it started. Hello, Cy. God damn it, Cy, the Gators are going to get her. This is Chuck.
You had glitter from Swamp Charm coming down on you.
So at the time, I'm like, okay, if this is what Chuck's saying, he's serious. Like, we need to get on this. So he gives me a little bit of background. He says, hey, we have the phones. We can't find her. We're looking all over. We do have the FBI involved. The FBI is giving us some advice too. We've searched a handful of areas, but man, it can't hurt to have another set of eyes. Can you guys help out? Absolutely. Send me the records. And we start reviewing the records. Now, I want to clean something up a little bit because I've gotten some text messages, maybe a phone call or two.
Yeah.
So I want to clean up our relationship with the FBI. I love the FBI. I'm not bagging on the FBI. The FBI is a big agency.
We have a lot of good friends that we've worked with in the FBI.
Through the years that we still work with that would call us today for help. I am not a FBI hater. I want to make that really clear. I do have an issue with a handful of the FBI cast members, not the cast team, but cast members in some of their stuff. The reason I have this,
when you say their stuff,
their theories, methodology, teaching, mapping, the way that they interact with law enforcement in general. And that's what I want to talk about just for a quick minute here. This isn't because I'm just getting all worked up because it's the FBI. There's a lot of history here. And I think some people have taken me bagging on the FBI cast team a little bit personally. Like, gosh, why is he so angry? He's just an angry little guy about this.
Yeah.
So I want to clear this up a little bit.
You're an angry little investigator.
One of the Grand Poobahs, and I'm just referring to him as a Grand Poobah because he was one of the founding members of the FBI cast team.
Who is no longer at the FBI.
He has since retired. But when they started this team, and this is the same people that were involved in 2016 when we're dealing with this case, they considered the FBI cast team, quote, one of the greatest investigative resources ever designed for law enforcement. And I thought, oh my God, you don't think well of yourself at all, do you?
That's a big statement.
That is a big statement. I've had a giant impact in this field. I do not consider myself, my products, or anything I've ever done as one of the greatest investigative resources designed for law enforcement. They go on to claim, and the timeline's really important here. In 2010 is when a handful of FBI agents were actually selected to receive this training. And they claim they created the first class of subject matter experts in the field of cellular record analysis, live tracking of phones, training, and expert witness testimony.
Who trained them?
Themselves and the carriers. But that's not what I'm getting at. It's the time frame. 2010. Do you know how many people outside of the FBI were testifying as cell phone matter experts in 2010?
A lot.
So to say, hey, we created the first team that did this in 2010. Oh, by the way, we were also the greatest resource ever to be provided to law enforcement. Like, come on.
It's kind of like false marketing at that point.
A little bit. Maybe our ego and a little bit of narcissism getting in there.
Well,
narcissism.
I think also it goes back to what a lot of people don't realize is that some of these positions are created within these big agencies for people to retire into. And what we have always called castle building, these people stay in these positions for a really long time. They're very soft, cushy positions to have, and they're very, very difficult to receive those positions.
Ivory Tower comes to mind.
Yes.
Where I can sit in the ivory tower and claim that I'm the greatest resource to law enforcement. And I created this unit that does this stuff for the first time ever. And let's dig a little deeper. That's happened. Let's dig a little deeper. That happened in 2010. 2011, year later. United States versus Antonio Evans. I invite anybody to look this case up. It's a criminal case. Antonio Evans committed some crimes. The FBI got involved. CAST specifically used their mapping and methodologies to help convict Antonio Evans. It was overturned. The CAST methodologies were thrown out of court, and they had to change the entire way that they were mapping and testifying to records. So this premier team made it a year before they started having things thrown out of court. Yet today, they still consider themselves one of the greatest law enforcement resources ever. And let's be honest, law enforcement's greatest investigative resource is the men and women who are actually working these cases. Like, they have this dedication, tenacity, and the drive every day. They handle actual caseloads. They're working terrible crime scenes. They're digging through brain matter. They're notifying moms of their children's death. Mm-hmm. It's not the same picture you get in the ivory tower.
No, because I think in the ivory tower, all you're working is these black and white data sets. You're not in the field with the agencies actually looking at all of the rest of the evidence, right? Now, here's a question I have for you, and I'm curious if you'll be able to answer this off cuff because we've never really discussed it. But it seems when the CAST team often gets involved in especially small agencies cases, these smaller agency, we've even seen it with big agencies, they almost relinquish control of that investigation to the CAST team and sometimes the FBI generally when they come in to start looking at a case. Why is that? Why is that so acceptable? Or why does it happen so often?
It's by design, and there's a lot of different laws at the federal space opposed to the local state space. So some of the discovery that state and local law enforcement is subjected to, the federal government is not. So it kind of starts to cloud things. And it's also by design. The FBI CAST team has taken this hard line that we are, listen to what they're explaining in the few things I was explaining earlier. We are the premier team. We are the only ones that really get this. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we're the only ones that can testify to it. I don't have time necessarily to explain to you, local state guy, all of these complexities. So we're just going to run it. And you're right. A lot of times there are delays. There are things where they drop the ball and the local agency doesn't know enough about the technology and what they're doing to even question it. So it isn't intentional on the local agency. It's just that there's a lot going on and they may not know. Again, I'm going to try to clean this up.
Okay.
There are a lot of CAST agents out there who do a great job. They're very smart. They're very good at what they're doing, and they have great attitudes. There's a handful that I've dealt with over the years that kind of give the rest a bad name. It's just like anything else in law enforcement. One bad apple, you look at the whole group, right? So I want to acknowledge that to begin with. Is there are some great people at CAST, and CAST does some great work. There's also some other people. And I think to summarize my little rant here, and to maybe help people understand this a little bit better, the FBI CAST team is a support unit. They are not the primary. They are invited into an investigation to help assist with a specialty. And if a handful of these guys would change that attitude to accept, hey, I'm here to support your investigation. I'm here to help. How can I help? What is the timeline? What can I do better to help this case for you? Yeah. It would totally change it, because when you come in with this, we are the premier investigative resource, you just piss people off. Well,
I don't think you just piss off law enforcement, but I've seen them actually anger other FBI agents who aren't part of the CAST team and have to have their work looked at by CAST team. Not just other FBI agents, but the general public as well.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to do this here is I'm going to bag on the FBI CAST team again for this case, but I wanted to put a little bit more background, because I think when I just critique them, it comes across like, well, this guy's just bitter with them. It's not that I'm bitter with them. This is a great case where the FBI told investigators on this case, we think the body's probably over here. And there's some information that points to a different place. And they're like, you probably shouldn't search over there. You're relying on this Nello state. It's not accurate. Oh, you talked to that Ray guy? You're wasting your time. And that's where I get frustrated is I want all the eyes. I want my opinion. I want the FBI's opinion. I want the U.S. Marshals, the ATF, Secret Service, any police department, anybody who's looked at records. I want all of their opinions, because maybe we'll figure it out when we come together with that. So I wanted to lay that foundation before we get into this next part. So they send me the records. I look at the map and I'm going to show everybody what this looks like. I come up with a completely different search area. But again, going back to some of our investigative techniques, I'm not going to get into the details of this case. I just want to look at the records. I want to see what happens in a vacuum. Then I'll come up with my theories. Then I'll go back to law enforcement and say, okay, here's what I'm seeing. How does this match your case? If that makes any sense. What I'm going to show you on the map here is a couple of colors here. The victim has two sources of records, the Nellos data and her call. So we're going to zoom in. The green dots with the yellow shaded area, that's Nellos. That's going to be the victim. So anytime you see those green dots, that's the Nellos data. And that yellow shaded area, that's the range. That's where AT&T is saying 25, 50 meters. Okay. Anytime that device, the victim's device, makes a call, text message, or data, it's going to come up red like this. And these are just estimated areas, that red shape you see. That's our program saying, hey, we think that phone is somewhere in that area. Blue is the suspect. That's the doctor's phone. And what we're seeing is we just saw Lyntell leave her apartment and drive towards the Walmart. She's getting at the Walmart, which is these green dots right here. And as we zoom in, you can actually see the Walmart parking lot. And this is when she's entering the Walmart parking lot. Now, the doctor also has Nellos. His are going to be orange. So the orange dots are his Nellos, green dots are Lyntell's.
Did we see his Nellos data at Walmart with her device?
We're seeing that right now. Those are the two devices coming together at Walmart's happening right now. So we see it both in the calls, the text, and the Nellos. Then we see them leave. And what you're seeing with this, and I realize it just looks like a bunch of colors, but we're going to start seeing both of those devices move in unison away from Baton Rouge. A really cool thing happens right there. They cross the Mississippi, which requires a bridge. So we can isolate, okay, we know they're westbound, and here's most likely the bridge and the time. Maybe we get video off of a camera. Okay. They're going to eventually end up on I-10, but it stagnates, and we're going to come back to that. It stagnates just up north of I-10 there for a minute. Mm-hmm. And then we start to see some data like this. And this is where, I don't know why, but the phone stagnates for, 30, 45 minutes. And we get these overlays from different hits. And that kind of makes this football shape. Well, taking what I had there and looking at routes in and out of exits, I come up with this search area that's in the red right here.
This search area, was it because you were looking at ingress and egress of accessible locations within that particular area of the data?
Yeah, so where we saw that overlap, what's happening is those are Nellos hits. And that's why the FBI right off the bat is like, you guys are relying on Nellos. It's not reliable. Don't put efforts into this.
They never use it, nor will they testify to it in court.
Yeah, and there was two things that caught my attention. Both of the actual data points, the latitude, longitude, was coming down right on a cell tower, which we've seen this in the past, where the Nellos data will start to default to the actual location of the cell tower opposed to the cell phone, and then we get these giant ranges. But based on all the activity coming out, it was clear to me both phones were westbound on I-10. Then we see the stagnant data with just the Nellos data, and we get the overlap. Well, when I map all of the other cell towers in the area, there is a cell tower just to the north of I-10. Never gets used. There is a cell tower just to the south of I-10. It never gets used. So this is one of those cases where when we look at all of the data and we can see, wait, there's towers here that aren't being used. It makes me think right off the bat, okay, they stayed pretty close to I-10.
Right.
Now, when I start looking at ingress and egress, like you're talking about, if I go past this exit and I continue to go west, where can I go? If I get off at the next exit and I'm coming back to the east, where can I go? And that's where the red. Now, when I'm talking about the red here, there is one other factor that's in the mix here. I didn't know all the details of why they thought, but Chuck was convinced she was in the swamps. That it's a body of water. They were looking specifically with a body of water because of what the 3-year-old had been saying. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing driving the red here. Now, do you see on the north side of I-10, right in the center of that red, there's a couple little green patches. There's one that kind of runs the same direction, parallel, right now along I-10, and then there's two right above it that run vertical.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's where she's going to be found, is those little vertical strips just north. So my red little search area there, I was probably off by maybe 200 yards, maybe 300 at the most.
Okay.
But ultimately, they're going to find her body just north of that red blob there.
Where were they searching before they called you?
They were searching a couple areas in town or closer to Baton Rouge. And then they got out to this area because they saw the phones were going west, but it's a big area and it's all swampy. They weren't really focused on a particular specific area out there. So this is the first time we're giving them, hey, I would search that red really, really well. And like I said, the red isn't on. Everybody is off at times to time. It's my best guess, but it's super close. Within 300 meters there is pretty damn good. Close. Now, as we continue to watch this play out, that's the search area. But what happens afterwards is pretty interesting as well. We're actually going to see both devices return to Baton Rouge, and they're still traveling together. However, when they get about LSU, so as you come into the west side of Baton Rouge, you get the LSU campus right there. And again, we're seeing green and orange. This is the last time we're going to see the green Nellis. It's going to go off the network. It's never going to come back.
And that was her phone.
Yeah, there's a bunch of bodies of waters. There's the river. He dumps her phone somewhere in that area. And then he's going to continue to her apartment complex. And that's where we see these locations here. Now, there's things we're going to get into here in a little bit. They do have surveillance video showing her car pulling into that parking lot that night. And this is going to be right around 11:30.
So do you think that that's why they were searching in town? Because they actually saw her device come back and then go off. So they were thinking, this is where her device stopped. She must have been in this area with her device.
Yeah, possibly. I think there's just a lot of factors when you have limited details there. You have to search everything, right?
Yeah.
And then as you get more and more and we start digging into the layers of data, we can start to get a little bit more refined. Mm-hmm. The important takeaway there, though, is Dr. Marks's phone is in the area of her apartment complex at about 11:30 p.m. This is the same time we see her car on surveillance video in the same area pull into the parking lot. And of course, we know now that the 3-year-old is in the car and the blood's in the car because it sits there until it's found the next morning by our good citizen. Now, there's some interesting things that happen with Dr. Marks's phone after he arrives at that parking lot. And when I say there's some interesting activity on his phone, it's an outgoing call. Now, I love outgoing calls because outgoing calls are intentional. It's me taking the time to either dial or hit a contact number and actually make a phone call. Mm-hmm. And what people don't realize is in 2016, even today in 2024, that's unusual. I want to talk a little bit about cell phone etiquette and how much it's changed from our childhood to today. If you wanted to go over and play with your friend, but you weren't sure if you could or if they were home, what do?
You call them or you knock on the door. You call them on their landline.
Today, if you want to send little Billy over to play with a friend's house, probably text the mom, hey, can you take a quick phone call?
Yeah.
Or if you just want to make a quick phone call to somebody, a lot of times people will text them first. Hey, do you have a minute?
Right. Yeah, you always see if somebody's available.
Yeah, it's just completely changed. So when I see outgoing calls without the preceding text message to say, hey, can you take a call? It captures my attention. When I see that at a critical moment, he just brought the car back. We know it's bloody with a 3-year-old. He's about to abandon in the parking lot, and he's taking time to make an outgoing call. That's an important call.
Well, yeah, oftentimes I think along with the etiquette piece is that if you're receiving a call instead of a text message from somebody, there's a sense of urgency about that person contacting you.
Right. And if you think back to our storyline, they met at Walmart. He left his motorcycle at Walmart. They both took Lyntell's car because now we know he's driving Lyntell's car.
Yeah.
So this outgoing call, no one's really sure about what's going on yet until somebody decides to come forward. And I'm going to give her a lot of credit because she comes forward. I'm not going to name her by name.
Okay.
It's the other side chick.
He has two side chicks.
He has two affairs going on. And he called his other girlfriend earlier in the evening. Hey, it's a boys' night. Going to go hang out with the boys. I might need a ride later if you're available. And she's like, yeah, I'm available.
So he was already planning on killing Lyntell.
Yeah. So when he drops the daughter, the 3-year-old, off in the parking lot with the car, he leaves her in the car, the bloody car.
Aww.
And then he gets out. He walks down the street. He calls his other girlfriend. She comes and picks him up. She's going to come forward when she sees the news and be like, hey, I picked him up that night.
Yeah.
Supposedly he's wearing his motorcycle gear. He has his helmet with him.
Mm-hmm.
And she explains that according to him, he went out with all of his friends. They left his bike at Walmart. They ended up at this other bar and he just needs a ride. So she picks him up and takes him back to Walmart.
Did she say if she saw any blood or anything on him? Was he acting out of sorts at all?
No, she wasn't suspicious of anything at all until she saw the news that he was arrested and put the timeline together. But okay. I've got to give her kudos for coming forward, because as soon as she sees this, she's going to come forward. But it's just another piece of great evidence, right?
Well, she probably had some red flags going on too, that he wasn't as honest as he was portraying himself.
He got weed.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah, this is what he gets.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just desserts. Mm-hmm. So we have the evidence lining up. We have the call to the other girlfriend. The timing is now consistent with what we're seeing in the phone records and the video camera of the car being dropped off. Mm-hmm. We're getting the statements that match the time frame perfectly. We see the call. She says, I think I picked him up around 11:30, and we see the in the phone records. So she's very reliable. That part looks really good. And she's very cooperative. She might have an axe to grind.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So at this point, law enforcement is thinking, we need to interview the good doctor. So they're going to bring him in for an interview. He admits to meeting Lyntell at the Walmart. Yep, we met there. We talked. We went our separate ways. No big deal. Nothing happened. He admits to the affair.
Did Walmart have video of them meeting up?
I can't recall if they had the video of them meeting up. I think you could see the car and the motorcycle like off in the distance, but nothing where you can say that's definitely Lyntell and that's the doctor.
Okay.
But it was consistent with what we saw with the phone records of kind of corroborating the other sources.
Okay.
He does admit to last seeing her in the Walmart parking lot. He says he left her there, but we know that's not true because we see that both phones leave together. When they ask him, well, what did you do when you left? He says, well, I rode around for a while and then I ended up going to Twin Peaks, which is a bar there in Baton Rouge. So they go and pull the Twin Peaks video. He never shows up at Twin Peaks. Oh. So now they know he's lying. There is a statement. If anybody wants to see this, 2020 did an episode on this called The Barefoot Witness, referring to the 3-year-old. In that Barefoot Witness, I don't know who the investigator is, but I know people see this, and I hate it when I see this because there's just so many assumptions, and it's not true. Law enforcement is quoted, during the interview, the doctor is holding his hands in front of his face when he's answering a lot of these questions. Mm-hmm. And one of the investigators says, well, that's a sure sign he's lying. There is no such thing as a human lie detector, especially when you're just meeting somebody. He's never talked to the doctor before. He could have talked to him 15 times over the last 3 years in perfectly natural, normal situations. And he just has a bad habit of talking with his hands in his face.
Sure.
You don't know. Now, if you have that baseline of somebody's behavior and then you see a change, maybe you can start to assume some stuff. But I hate when I see that. So if anybody follows up on this and they see that, and then the problem is you get people on YouTube now who are like, oh, his hands are in front of his face. He's lying. I know it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just not true. So trying to spread a little bit of truth.
Maybe he always puts his hands over his face to cover a big wart on his nose or something.
Yeah, maybe he's got like the herp going on the lip or something.
Yeah, he always has to cover it up.
Yeah, don't judge the guy. It doesn't mean he's lying. And I think that's
he could just be self-conscious of his nose or something.
And I am really critical when I see statements like that because I do think it spreads a lot of false information and then a lot of assumptions are made and sometimes bad decisions end up as a result.
Especially about investigative procedure.
Yeah. So what does the fact that he told investigators he went to Twin Peaks really mean? Number one, doctors can be dumb.
Well, yes.
How would he not think they have surveillance video? They're going to follow up. I didn't spend any money. It's not in my financials, of all the things to say. So it just shows.
He has academic smarts, not street smarts.
Yeah. So where this may be pre-planned, he's doing a lot of dumb shit.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm talking about this really quickly is a lot of people have commented or have said things to me about, well, aren't you guys educating bad guys? Like, you guys are a really good show to watch if you want to learn how to get away with a crime. What a lot of people don't realize is to commit a crime like this, if you're a decent person most of the time, it's such an extreme to go to. Even when you plan it, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make dumb mistakes and they're going to be found. So just don't commit the crime.
Killing somebody can be very stressful.
That's hard. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. At least I think so.
Ask some of these people.
Based on the statements from the third girlfriend, I'm just calling her the third girlfriend at this point, none of this lines up on the timeline. So they know he's a liar. They can't quite prove him to be a killer yet, but he's definitely a liar. On June 10th, they're going to arrest the doctor. So it happens pretty quick. Within 48 hours of her disappearance, he's in custody. It's not a super strong case, lots of circumstantial evidence, but I want to spend a second here too explaining why sometimes we take people into custody quickly. Mm-hmm. If you think back to Roses for Jackie, Jonathan Burns.
Yes.
When he killed Jackie Hartman, we hadn't found her body yet, but I didn't want him having the ability to manipulate witnesses, to potentially hide evidence or destroy evidence. I wanted that guy under control as quickly as we could. So the second we could articulate probable cause, and we did it on a sexual assault, not the murder, we arrested him and put him in jail. And the reason for this is I want to control his movements for a while. I don't want him out there destroying more evidence. And it's clear he's our suspect. I can make probable cause to arrest him. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's best to wait, but sometimes you want to do this a little bit early. In this case, they're going to do it early. One of the advantages that came out of that, again, the doctor's dumb. As soon as he gets into jail, calls his sister. Hey, sis, can you run by the house? I have an iPad and an Apple Watch. I'm going to need you to go ahead and erase that as fast as possible. Just reset both of them. And you know what? Maybe take them out to the swamp, feed them to the gators. Like, there's things on there that I don't want people to see. Did she admit to doing this for him? They intercepted this well, and they already have the iPad and the Apple Watch, but they catch it on the jail call. The point here is the acknowledgement of, hey, there's some guilt there, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, he will bond out, so he is going to get out of jail, but they delay this for a little bit through the arrest. $800,000 was his bail, and he made it. How did he make bail? He's a principal at a middle school in Baton Rouge. I have no idea. Family, bikini car wash? I don't know. It's a good question. Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah. We talked about the search area and trying to find Lyntell. I didn't give the timeline there. It took 5 days. So once we gave him the search, they arrested him before they found Lyntell. And that's why I was saying it was a little bit fast on the arrest. Mm-hmm. So for 5 days, they're going to search that basin. The FBI is kind of giving them a little bit of grief for searching out there because they don't feel that's where Lyntell is going to be found, but they stick with it. Okay. On the 5th day, it's not investigators, it's actually a worker. So there's sugarcane fields out there. That's a lot of sugarcane fields. And there was a worker who was working one of these sugarcane fields and found a body in an irrigation ditch. So it wasn't a big body of water, it was just this irrigation ditch. And that's ultimately how she's going to be found. So going back, you mentioned something that you would get to it later when I asked if the 3-year-old had seen where he put her body. Do we know if she had followed him to the irrigation ditch? The irrigation ditch is really, you can park next to it. So I suspect she was still in the car, but she would be able to see him clearly. Through the window. Through the window, yeah. I think she absolutely saw her mom get dumped in this ditch. And there was some water there. So that's probably why by the water. And she's 3. I mean, is she going to know the difference between a ditch and a lake and a pond? No. Come on. It's interesting with search areas. I've given a lot of search areas to different agencies. And I talked earlier about the anxiety. Chuck hit me back 2 or 3 times and he was stressing. He was like, hey, the FBI doesn't think she's out here. Like, how sure are you? Like, what else can we do? Because they're feeling that pressure. Right. And a lot of times, like, hey, just hold fast. Just keep doing what you're doing. You've got to eliminate that area. If nothing else, you can at least eliminate it. So stick with it. And that's where this anxiety comes in that I was talking about earlier. And I want to talk a little bit really quick, a side story. We're not doing this case yet because we're waiting for the court piece to go through. But I had this other case where I gave them a search area, a pin on the map, and that one, I think I was off by 5 meters, if that. Mm-hmm. But there was some issues with the communication. They were having a hard time getting their computers to work out in the field, so they couldn't look at my actual pin, and they ended up in a mine shaft because they thought, well, this looks good. And so they got out to the general area. Then somebody saw something. Then somebody else saw something else. They completely get redirected. Mm-hmm. And now they're half a mile away from the search area I gave them. They find this mine shaft and they're thinking, what a great place to hide a body. Mm-hmm. So they can't see down the mine shaft and it goes straight down. They bring out the agency drone and they try to fly the drone down the mine shaft. Oh, well, as soon as it loses GPS, it goes crazy. It hits the side of the mine shaft. It wrecks. It goes to the bottom. So they lose their drone. They lower a camera down there. And at the end of the day, they realize there's no body down there. So they call me back and they're like, hey, we're at this mine shaft. We lost our drone. We lowered a camera. It's not here. And I'm looking at where they're searching. I'm thinking, that's nowhere near where I gave you the location. Right. So I get them redirected. They go to this other location. In this particular case, the body got burned. You could see the burn area from about a half mile away if you just look, because
If
it's
you
out in the open
just
desert.
threw the drone up, you could fly it over and see the burn
So
area.
even when I say like, hey, we're giving a search area, things get screwed up and lost in communication. And then the people on the ground are always going to see something different than what I'm seeing necessarily in Google Maps. So it's never as clear cut and simple as it sounds.
So when they were searching the search area that you gave to them, how long was it before the person in the sugarcane field actually found her body? Were they all searching kind of at the same time that he had found the body?
They were. So they had been searching for 5 days. And now we've moved forward to June 14th is the 5th day when the worker is actually going to find her. And they were really focusing on water. So where they were searching all that area, they were looking at their maps and looking at any decent body of water and just searching it. And, you know, if a body sinks or a body's eaten by alligators, it's not just a search where you walk by a pond and say, oh, it's good. Like, they're doing really thorough searches.
But that's, again, I think where we can all really get tunnel vision when we listen to specific statements, right? We just only start looking at bodies of water. We don't necessarily consider water in an irrigation ditch or a canal or something like that.
And it's funny you're bringing that up, and I wanted to hit on that, so I love that you saw that coming. If I didn't know about the water statement, my search area probably would have included where they actually found her. I changed what I normally would have done for a search area because I was trying to focus on this body of water. So, man, it's tried and true. Don't get caught up in the details of the case. Let the records speak for themselves and then see how it impacts your case later on. So it's kind of interesting. So when they find Lyntell Washington's body, obviously there's going to be an autopsy. In the autopsy, they do discover and confirm she is pregnant. 7-month-old baby girl. So her daughter was going to have a sister.
And, you know, it's interesting because when you are pregnant and you have other children, you talk about, oh, you're going to have a sister, you're going to have a little brother. So the 3-year-old was probably very aware that there was another life coming.
Her sister. Yeah. More importantly, the DNA test that is a result of this autopsy shows that without a doubt, Dr. Marks is the father. So it is his baby. Her cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. So she was shot in the back of the head is how she was killed.
It confirms the little girl's statement.
Yeah, remember when I first said right after they crossed the bridge, the phone stagnated for just a little bit before it went west on I-10? There's a shooting range out there. She was not killed in the car, but it looks like she was transported in the car. There was also things that were put in the car that had blood spatter on them, such as the 3-year-old, and I think it's her stroller. I think they went for a walk out somewhere by this shooting range. The 3-year-old is in the stroller when he shoots her outside the car because there's some blood spatter that I'm seeing in the car that is clearly on items that were placed in the car after the fact, not when she was shot. And I think he was close to the shooting range because hearing shots fired out there is Thursday,
Not
right?
uncommon.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of interesting how that piece works out. But yes, very planned, right? Very premeditated.
Do we know, possibly based on where the gunshot wound was, how long she would have survived if it was an immediate death?
It appears it was immediate. Okay. Yeah, there's no reason to believe she...
Because the 3-year-old said she was holding her head. Yeah. So I'm wondering if she ever made it to the car bleeding, that the 3-year-old would actually see her holding her head and then go to sleep. And
obviously she was in a pretty severe state of decomp, so it's going to be hard to tell if there's any other injuries. He could have hit her first and then shot her. We don't know about her holding her head. But it appears from everything I've seen, it was instantaneous.
Wow.
I always like to poke fun at dumb things attorneys say. Defense comes out. This is not the suspect. He did not kill Lyntell. In fact, she was found on land, and the 3-year-old, the state's own witness, said she was in water. They've already discredited a 3-year-old in this investigation. He literally says it's the defense attorney.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm listening to this statement. I'm thinking it's an irrigation ditch and she's 3. Like, maybe we can give her the benefit of the doubt. It's the swamp. Like, get over it. All right, let's talk about Google. June 8th is when all this goes down. This is the meeting. She's killed on June 8th. On May 20th, the doctor Googles pregnant shot, S-H-O-T, just the words pregnant shot. He also starts doing online rifle searches to buy a rifle online. May 24th, he starts doing searches of where to buy a large caliber handgun. Not just a handgun, but a large caliber handgun.
He wants to make sure he gets the job done.
Like if you think of damning words to put in your search history, not just I want to buy a gun for this murder, I want to buy a big gun. Like how dumb can you be? May 28th, injection of Clorox. What would happen if you injected Clorox into your bloodstream, quote unquote?
Oh my God.
You ready for the next one? This one's even better. Quote, do I have to pay child support if the baby doesn't have my last name? Unquote. Yes, doctor. That's how they determine child support, is how the baby's named. Like, how dumb can you be? May 29th. Failure to appear for paternity test. What happens? If I missed a paternity test, can they still make me pay? Oh, the child doesn't have my last name. Would I still have to pay? Like, he's really contemplating this child support thing is a big deal for him.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a lot of money, it appears.
$800,000 to get out of jail.
Unless he's supporting other kids that nobody knows about.
Maybe so. Trial. The DA that's assigned to this case is very, very colorful. I'm not going to do it justice, but I'm going to try to give you a quote that he used in his opening statement. Okay. And this is funny because this is actually part of an appeal that gets filed later, is what this prosecutor said. Okay. Now remember, Deep South, Louisiana. Yeah. Baton Rouge.
You want to relate to your juries.
I'm going to cook you up some gumbo justice. I'm going to put some Google records in there, some phone records, some video surveillance, and then I'm going to let it cook. And I'm going to serve it to him, pointing at the doctor. Ice cold, just like the ice cold water running through his veins.
Oh, wow.
Reminds me of Waterboy.
It's very descriptive.
Yes.
What he's going to do to him.
He's vile. Calls the defendant vile. He's a diabolical, manipulative master of deception. One who's become a doctor of death. It's almost comical.
This is like a movie.
Yes. So he's playing this out. Well, they're going to convict him. So he's guilty. He will get life without the possibility of parole. Then he files an appeal. And part of his appeal is how colorful this prosecutor was and the things that he said. Like, you can't call me vile in front of the jury. You can't tell the jury I'm a diabolical doctor of death. Right. The appeals court's like, yeah, it's called an opening statement. He can call you pretty much whatever he wants.
That is so funny. It reminds me actually a little bit of, I don't remember if it was an appeal or if it just came out in closing statements in court, when a defense attorney actually said that the animations you create with cell phone records are so over the top visually good that they should be taken out of court. They should be suppressed because it's too movie-like.
His exact statement was, this is nothing more than a commercial for my client's guilt. Yeah, so he's going to appeal, and he doesn't file just one appeal. I think there's 23 different things he attacks in the appeal. None of them get through. He is still guilty, serving life in prison, no chance of parole.
And his wife, were they still married?
You know, it's interesting. She came out hot and heavy with his two defense attorneys right off the bat, went on Nancy Grace. And you know, everything on Nancy Grace is accurate and true. And Nancy Grace did her thing where she's over the top and the wife is like, this is not my husband. They have the wrong man. I would know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, then everything came out, including the DNA, that it was his child. She divorced him.
Oh.
She didn't go on Nancy Grace for that part.
I was going to ask if Nancy had her back.
Yeah, no, weird. Some doctors are really dumb. That's my key takeaway for this week. And, you know, I bagged on the FBI cast team again. And yes, in this case, they were wrong. They're not always wrong. I've been wrong. I'm not always wrong. One thing that I want to point out here that Chuck did really, really well is get as many eyes on this case as he can. Get as many opinions as they can. Cover all of your bases. And that's what I'm bagging on at the end of the day. Isn't necessarily the FBI cast team. It's the FBI cast team operating in a vacuum where it's us and only us. And it's not just the cast team. It's any law enforcement resource that operates like that. You are going to have critical failures, like not finding a body. Yeah. So that's my takeaways. Although I'm bagging on them, it's more of this process that, well, don't listen to that person. They don't know what they're saying. Yeah. Listen to everybody.
I also liked everything, though, that you brought up as a takeaway of, hey, if you are a person in this position of not trusting somebody, think about all of those things before going to confront them by yourself. Whether you're pregnant or whether you're trying to leave the relationship, if they are displaying behaviors that make you feel uncomfortable or that somehow make you feel unsafe internally, if you're getting that instinct of this person scares me in some way, don't do anything by yourself. Make sure that you let people know what's going on. Give them your location. Make sure that they go with you to these places. Take all of those key points that Sai mentioned earlier to stay safe, to stay alive, to keep your own children safe.
Right. So as we started teaching law enforcement across the country, different methodologies and investigative techniques, we created these best practices for law enforcement to follow because they're tried and true. They work. They help make sure that you're doing the best possible thing for that investigation to yield the best results. I was thinking when we put this episode together, we should start setting up best practices for just everybody, general knowledge of best practices. So this one, to your point earlier, be safe when you're dealing with highly emotional issues. You don't know what somebody else has at stake, and you don't know what they're willing to do to preserve that, right? So when you're having these highly emotional issues, and this one involves intimate partner relationships, and we'll talk about that more in future episodes. But man, you can't get any more emotionally charged, right? She's pregnant. He wants an abortion. She doesn't. She finds out about the marriage. She's possibly going to ruin his marriage. There's the child support issue. It doesn't get any more emotional. There's no reason to trust him. Don't trust him. Err on the side of caution. And like we talked about earlier, there's ways you can help protect yourself and just put your mind in that right place to be very protective of you and, more importantly, your children.
Yes, without necessarily being emotional in that moment.
Yeah.
Thinking with your head, not your heart necessarily. Thank you for joining us this week for Swamp Predators. We hope to have you back next week for Where Do We Draw the Line? Have a great week, socialites. Stay safe.
Brand new, nice Cadillac CTS. It slides to a stop on this dirt road. It's a huge cloud of dust. Okay. They both walk to the trunk, pop the trunk. There's a dead body in the trunk. Driver yells at the passenger again. Come on, help me. The driver hands the passenger a saw, like a wood saw.
Okay.
You know what to do.